In this video, I'm going to walk through a interactive playground, which is meant to help beginners in JavaScript understand the relation between a string value and the dot length property, which corresponds to the number of characters inside the string. So I wanted to create this interactive playground so beginners to JavaScript could see the relation with this dot length property. And I also wanted like a visual representation where they can actually see the string split into characters, of course characters containing spaces, and then the counter at the bottom. And I also wanted to make this interactive so people can play around and try different like things like typing something inside this string as if they were writing this inside a code editor, and then they can interactively immediately see the output here in this nice table. So that was my intention. If you want, you can follow along to see how I will create this, and you're going to learn a lot of like really nice CSS and JavaScript tricks along the way. So let's start. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new Codepen because I'm going to code this live on a Codepen environment. So I don't have like to set up my local environment. And an easy way to set up a new Codepen is to go to a new tab and then type pen.new. So by pressing pen.new, I'm immediately redirected to a new Codepen. I'm going to open up the console and I'm going to name this string length interactive playground so I can start working. I will immediately hit save so that my Codepen is saved, and then I'm going to start coding. The first thing I want to do is I want to remove this really bright white background here. So in my CSS tab, I'm going to set this to black and set the color to white so that I can have a nicer, like less like eye straining environment here. Let me save. And now I'm going to create a simple code section, so where I can place my code. First of all, I'm going to create a main element that will contain everything within this playground, and then inside this main I'm going to create a div that will contain the code itself. So you will see how this will help us in the way. So code wrapper, I'm using the Emmet Abbreviations here, which are also available in VS Code, and this will create a div with an ID code wrapper, and within this code wrapper I can now use the code element to put my code. So the thing I'm going to write is some string, then hello world, and this is my code. And at the bottom I will add another line, console log some string dot length. Now, at this point, I will put a line break here just to move this line, move this statement on the next line. Now, here's my code, and I want this to be interactive. So I want the users to be able to click here and access this text interactively and then change it. At this point, the only thing I can do is just select the text. So I want to make this editable. But before going through this, adding this interactivity, I want to change the styling of the code a little bit so that it looks much like what we see in a code editor. For example, in a code editor, I have this online web version of VS Code, which can be found on vscode.dev. Please check the description below for all these links. And what I want to do is I want to turn this this kind of like a text that I now have on my environment to this kind of like nice colored syntax highlighting that we see in code editor, so that every single part of the code is colored in a different way, which is a really nice way to read the code. So this is what I first want to do to make my code a little bit nicer than this like white color. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make the font size a little bit bigger. So let me turn this into something like 1.2 REMs. That's 1.2 times the font size of the root element. So if I make this the body font size 16 pixel, then this will be 1.2 times that font size. If I make this 2 rem, that will be 2 times the font size of the root element. Let's check that out. So let me inspect this element. You will see I have my code. I have the font size here. I can go to compute it and search for the font size of this element. And as you can see, the font size is indeed 32 pixel, which is 2 times the root element's font size 16 pixel. So this computed tab enables me to read and see and access the computed values from certain elements. Because as you can see from the styles, the only thing that I can see is this multiplier, this REM multiplier, but I really want to see the pixels. Okay, we found this really handy tool. Let me get back to 1.2 REMs. Okay, how does VS Code and other code editors turn these strings into a colored string? So as you can see, if I go here and I inspect the VS Code panel, you will see that VS Code splits every single identifier or every single code part into a span, and it gives that span a different color. Let me inspect this this part of the VS Code editor. Unfortunately, I cannot right-click and go to inspect because VS Code, the online VS Code editor, has disabled this functionality so that it can use this contextual menu, which is native to the VS Code editor. So the only thing I can do here is press F12 on my keyboard so that I can open up the DevTools through the F12 shortcut. Or I can go here in the window and open up the developer tool. I think we can find this somewhere like here, developer tools. So several ways to open up the developer tools whenever the page that we're using has disabled the right-click contextual menu of the browser. Now let's see how does VS Code breaks this code. As you can see, every single bit of this code, every single like variable declaration, every single space, every single identifier, every single operator has its own span with its own class, and each class has a particular color associated with it. So in order to mimic this behavior, I'm going to do exactly the same thing in my code. I'm going to go here and break everything apart. So span, I'm going to wrap the const, which is a variable declaration here. And then I'm going to wrap the identifier and then the assignment operator, then the string, and then also here I have this console object and the log.log method, and then I have some as you can see, VS Code editor breaks every single part of the code into its own span. And now what I want to do is to give these classes some classes so I can identify, access them, select them, and apply a different color. So I'm going to name this, let's say, variable. I'm going to give this a class of identifier. And then this will be like a class of operator, because this is an assignment operator. This is a string, so class string, and then this is an object, so the console object, I'm going to give it an object. This is an object property or method. I'm just going to use property for both properties and object methods. And then here also I have this, let's make this, I don't know, a identifier, and then this is an object property, so property. Just some simple like class names to separate these elements and give them a different color. So next, let's color them according to the theme used by VS Code. So I'm going to go and select code, and inside the code, I'm going to select the variable. I'm going to give it a color red to see whether I can actually select and change the color. Indeed, I can select this span and change the color, but I'm going to use the same colors that VS Code is using. So I'm going to go here and pick, using the inspector tool, this element, grab the color from here, and then place it here so I can have the nice color. Let me do the same with the identifier. So code identifier color. Let me see. Yep. And then I'm going to select the operator. So code operator color, this one. Then I'm going to prepare for the string. Let me give the string just an orange for now, but I'm going to pick the color used by VS Code. So let's take this color and insert it here. And now I have the object. So here is the object. So code object color, and then let me just wrap the code here. I have like a small typo here. So yep, that's it. Was missing. Then I'm going to give the same color here. Some string is an identifier. Let me see. Span. Okay, I have like a typo here. I need a class here to give that identifier the color. And now I need the color for the property. Let me give that a yellow for now, and then grab the one that is used by VS Code. Let me go here, grab that color, and everything is in place. My code looks almost similar to the VS Code actual syntax highlighter. Now there are other spans, of course, these parentheses, but I'm going to stick with just these few. Okay, we have our code. Let me just give the code wrapper, the div that wraps this code, a nice like different color. So I'm going to fold some of these CSS selectors at this point, and then I'm going to say code wrapper. Let's give this a different background, somewhere lighter black, let's say. Let's give it some padding to make it a little bit nicer. And then I'm going to add an 8-star horizontal rule at the bottom so that I can separate this from the next section. It looks pretty nice, as you can see. Now the next part is to be able to make this interactive. I want the users to be able like to type something here, like click here, and then be able to change. At this point, nothing is working this way. And the way that I can do this is I can use an HTML attribute called contenteditable. So MDN content editable. Always consult the MDN documentation. Contenteditable is an HTML attribute that allows us to apply this and then be able to change the content of the element interactively. So this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to place it inside the element that I want to be editable. The string is the part that I want to be editable. So this is the span. I'm going to place contenteditable equals true. And let's see if I can change this. Unfortunately, I cannot change this. So there's something wrong with how I'm using this some string. This is because I've placed it, I think, on another element. Yes, indeed, I need to move this from here to this span. So this is the part that I want to be editable. And as you can see, just by putting the contenteditable attribute, I can now change everything in here interactively. That's pretty nice. I also want to give this element a nice code editor feel, look and feel. So I want to remove this outline from this element. So I'm going to go to my CSS, find the string part, and I'm going to give it an ID because I'm going to use this ID to select this particular element. And I'm going to use this ID so that I can give it an outline of none so that I can remove this outline. As you can see now, it looks more like a code editor. I can click, I can focus, and I can type, and there's no outline. So it really feels like a code editor at this point. Be very, very careful when using the outline none. Ideally, for accessibility purposes, you really want the outline to be visible. In this case, it's just an interactive example, and I want to give it like the look and feel of code editor. That's why I'm removing the focus here. But be very, very careful when removing the outline. 9 out of 10 times, you really don't want to remove the outline styling. Okay, now I can change this. The next thing I want to do is create this section where I can take the string, I can split it into different characters, and then display this nice output at the bottom, which counts the characters along with the total length. So let's do that. I'm going to wrap this section, and then I'm going to put this here, and then I'm going to name this section debug. Emmet Abbreviations, once again, the name of the element, the ID, and then pressing tab will automatically create this HTML element for me. And in this element, I want to have like 4 child elements. I want to have this string label, this string length label, and then these 2 boxes. So let me create this. So I will use a div for the string. I want to use a div for the, let's say, characters. So for now, I'm just going to say hello. Going to change this, of course. And then another div for the string.length, and another div which will contain the count of the characters. Okay, now before going and change this section to look like this interactively, I want to change the styling first. So let's see how we can deal with this situation. So I have a section that has 4 block elements, and every block element is placed on a new line. But I don't really want this layout. So I'm going to switch to Flexbox. So I'm going to change the display of this element to Flexbox in order to give this layout that looks a little bit something like this, like a table with 2 columns and 2 rows. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to style the debug. I'm going to give it a display flex. So as you can see now, all elements are now on the same row. And then I'm going to just have like a nice outline for these elements to see where exactly each of these 4 divs is placed. I'm going to select and target the children of the section element, of the debug element, which are the divs on the first level, and I'm going to apply them an outline of, let's say, gray, just to see where each div is placed. Okay, now I see these 4 divs on the same row. I want to move them on the next row. So in order to do that, I need to make the first 2 elements have a width of 100% of the section element, and so that the next 2 elements will be moved on the next line. So in order to do that, I really need to target this element and this element and give them to both of them a total of 100% width. Just to give you an idea, if I target like each one of these and give them a width of 100%, you will see they will just try to move along the same row and get as much width as they can, but they don't have 100% width of the total section element. That's because Flex makes these flex items, these flex children, flexible, and it squeezes them to fit on one row. If I want this Flexbox container, this section, to allow them to wrap on a new line, if not enough space, not enough width is available, I can go here and check the flex wrap to wrap. Now, when the Flexbox items do not have enough space to fill in like the 100% of their parent element, they will just wrap to the next line. So flex wrap with wrap, I give them a width of 100%, but I don't want all of them to have 100%. I want them to have kind of like something that looks like this. So this string will have something along the lines of 25% of the total width, and this rest, this box will have the rest of the width, which is for 75%. So both these elements fit on a new line, on the same line, and the next 2 elements on the next line. So 25%, 75% on this one, and then the same on the next line. So let's see how we can do that. So in order to target this and this element and give them a 25% width, and then target this and this element and give them 75%, I need to use some CSS tricks. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to target the div elements that are nth child odd. So I'm going to use the nth child and use the odd value in order to target only the child elements, the child divs that are on an odd number line. For example, the first one, the third one, these are odd numbers. So with the nth child, I can target only the elements, the child elements that are found on an odd indexing number, 1, 3, 5, 7, and so forth. If I change to, let's make this, if I change this to even, I can grab the even lines. That means the next divs that contain the boxes. And this is what exactly I'm going to do. And I'm going to give them a different color. So as you can see, by using the nth child with the odd and even values, I can target the odd and the even. Now in this case, I see something strange. Let me save. I can see this green one, I can see this green one, and they're kind of like intersecting, but I think we have the correct. So let's try and give a width of 25% to the odd elements. That's correct. Let's give this width of 75%. And as you can see, as we squeeze these elements back to a different size other than 100%, we have the table layout. So right now, these elements will have 25% of the parent element width, whatever that is. And then with these green areas, we'll have 75%. Okay, we have what we want. Let's comment the debugging sections. And now we need to make this part of the code dynamically get the string value, split this string into characters, and then display the different characters in these boxes, along with the counting at the bottom. In order to do that, I first going to manually create these boxes, and then I'm going to dynamically use JavaScript to create this. But first, because I want to deal with the styling, I'm just going to say span by 5. This is an Emmet abbreviation, which means it's going to create 7 spans. I think I can give a value. As you can see, I can type something here. So this Emmet abbreviation will create 5 spans with an 8th value. And then I'm going to replace this with hello. As you can see, Emmet abbreviations help us a lot. And now I'm going to target these spans and give them a look that looks like this, a styling that looks like this. So for this, I'm going to give this div an ID. So I'm going to name this chars, for short for characters, so that it's easier for me to or I can just use this identifier since this is unique. And okay, first of all, let me see whether I have selected. Yes, I can select, so I can apply some styling, and then I'm going to target the spans, the direct elements. Okay, that seems great for now. Let me keep this outline just for debugging purposes. So I see there is some space between these elements. We'll deal with it in a bit. First, let's give these elements a width. First of all, let's start with the font size. Let's start with font size. So 1.2 rem. Let's see how this looks. And in order to have like a nicer CSS font for this, I'm going to search for a CSS, a nice CSS font family, which is called System, and it's based on the system font of the computer. I'm going to Google for CSS font system. And here I'm going to go and grab the first CSS tricks link. And I'm going to grab this font family. So as you will see, this tries to use some of the system fonts, the font families that are found inside the operating system, and apply a nice looking font family. So let me go here and place this system family. As you can see, it's much nicer than the sans serif. I will put the description for these links below. And now let's see. We have a width of, we have a font size of 1.2 rem. Let's add the same width. So we have like width boxes and height. So we can have like some boxes. As you can see, the boxes have do not accept the width value. If I put here like 2 or 22, nothing happens. That's because by default span elements, these are span elements, are inline elements, and inline elements do not have a width property. We cannot change the width. So in order to do that, I'm going to switch this element from inline to inline block. So display inline block, which is a hybrid mode that allows us to use some block properties within inline mode. So that's kind of like a mix between an inline and a block element. As you can see, when I change from inline to inline block, the width starts working. So I have like both the width and the sides and the height set to the size. Let me center them with the text align center. I will give a little bit more space to these elements. Actually, I want to have some space. And then I'm going to give a border. I'm going to switch to a border, and I'm going to give a gray color because I want this to be the actual color. So they're very close to this. Now I have to see how this space is created between them. I believe that or let me just inspect and actually find out through the inspector. So let me see. I will try to move this here. So unfortunately, I can not see. Let me. CSS, the result. Let me. Okay, it's a little bit difficult. Okay, so I have this element and I want to see where the space around this comes from. So let me go to compute it, and I can see I have the content, I have the padding, I have the border, I have no margin. So the space is coming from another place. So I cannot really see here. Span. Okay, this didn't help me. So let me close the console. I will try to remove this through margin, even though I was that didn't change anything because there was zero margin. Let me see if I can change the margin here. Nothing. This is so there's something happening here that provides this space between the characters. Now, we've checked through the DevTools. We saw there are no margins around these elements. So there's something strange happening here. There's some empty space here that is being displayed. There's no margin. So there's some way this space gets displayed here. So let me inspect the elements again, and let's see if I can. Let me see. This doesn't help me. Let me see if I can highlight this through the elements panel. Okay, there's something here. There's some space. I'm trying to see whether there's a way to like visualize this here in the DevTools. Unfortunately, we cannot see it. So where does this space come from? So the space comes from this part. And to see what let me just remove this. As you can see, the space here between these spans is actually space that it gets displayed. It's something that is put on the web page. So this space in HTML, when we have like more than two spaces, it gets concatenated to one space character. So if I press space 2 or 3 times, this will actually be like one space character. Now this is a span. So I don't know, let me put this somewhere. Let me see, let's wait. Okay, this is an inline block element. So let me showcase this. Div. Let me see. So I have this space here. I'm trying to demonstrate this. No, okay. Let's. Nothing comes to mind at this point. But the point is that every space in HTML is being displayed. And if we have more than two spaces, it gets compressed, it gets concatenated to one space character. So we cannot like have 2 or 3 space characters or tab characters being displayed as 2 spaces. They're just one space character. So this whole line of spaces or new lines, it gets concatenated to a single space character and gets displayed, and it has some width, as you can see here. So one way that I can remove this space is I can just change this to actually delete the space between the spans. Or another way to do this is to turn this into a flexbox. So this is a display. This element is a div. It's a block element. It has display block. If I change this to flexbox, so if I go here and I say chars display flex, I can actually see that I have the same result without changing my markup, which is actually pretty nice because I don't want like to delete lines or to be able to make this code less readable. This is much nicer. Okay, so we found out about these tricky hidden spaces, new lines and space characters. Now I can use the same thing right here. And I can replace this with 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I have exactly the same. Now I want the same styling for both of these. So I'm going to change this ID to a class. Or no, let's keep the ID here. Maybe I'm going to use this. So ID chars, this is ID index, let's say, and I'm going to give the same styling to both these sections, to the ID index and to the chars. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say this display flex will be applied both to the index, and this is also going to be applied to the index span. So they have the same styling. Let's see how this looks like. That seems to be looking a little bit like we see here. Let me add some padding. Let's see if I can. Let's see. No, this is way too big. So let's give it a 0.2. Perfect. We have some padding. This looks nice. Now let's dynamically create this from the string. Let's get into some JavaScript. So in order to create these sections, what JavaScript needs to do, let me go here. Now let's start with the characters. So what JavaScript needs to do is to read this part of the code and split this into different characters, display them here in these boxes, and dynamically create this section instead of manually. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to go here and grab the element that contains this string. So the element that contains this code is this element that has an ID string, str. That's why I put this ID here. So let me grab this. I'm going to say, let's say string element document get element by ID str. Let's see whether I have like the element at hand correctly. Maybe there's a typo, or maybe let's see, I have the string. I will just console clear to have the console auto clear every time the code changes. So I have the element, that's perfect. Now I need to get the text, the hello world. So I will say const string equals string L text content. That's the text content found in this element. Let me double check. And after I can see the hello world. Okay, now it's time to split the string and display this here as boxes. So the way that we split a string is we use the split method. So I will say split based on the empty character, and this will give me an array of the characters contained within the str string. So let's also console log to see that everything is correct before moving on to the next step. Okay, we have this. As you can see, there are some extra characters contained here. That's because I have placed this span around the whole section here, which contains the double quotes. I don't want the double quotes. I want only the hello world, the characters. The double quotes are here to signify to JavaScript that this is going to be string value. So I'm going to move this span to just wrap the actual string content and not the double quotes. So I don't want the double quotes. These are JavaScript things. And this is my hello world. As you can see, it's an array with 12 elements containing the space character in between. And this is how I'm going to display this. This is the actual length, the sum string length. So let me display this as a box. I have this array. I can loop over this array using the for each. And for every character, I'm going to console log to see whether I get every character indeed. So looping over the array of characters and console logging every single character, as you can see. Now, instead of console logging these characters, I want to create a span and put it inside this area. This area is found in the section debug inside the chars div. Let me grab this element. So const chars element equals document. Unfortunately, no autocomplete on Codepen. So let me get the chars. And I'm going to add these characters as a span. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to loop over each character and say chars L innerHTML, which allow me to append some HTML to the element. And I'm going to say span. I'm going to use the template literals here. Let's see if this works. Indeed, it works. As you can see, I can only see one span. That's because I'm assigning, and on every iteration of this loop, I'm just replacing the inner HTML with a span in order to actually see what I'm describing here. I'm going to use the second for each argument parameter, the index, which contains the index of its array element. And as you will see, this will be the last element, which is the index 12. Counting starts from 0 in array, so we see 12. We see 11. If I want to see like actually 12, if I'm counting from 1, I can just add 1. As you can see, the last character is displayed, the last index is being displayed, is being appended to the inner HTML, and all other characters are being replaced, are being removed. So instead of assigning, I need to append, so that I have all the characters appended here and not just, so let's be careful with this one. So I have my index, which gives me like the numbering of each character. This will be used on the next string. For now, I'm just going to use the character. So all the characters are being displayed here. And now that I know how to display these numbers, I will use the same loop to insert these numbers on the next box. So that's the index. element. So I'm going to say const. Let me just grab this here and say index element equals get element by the index. So let me grab this element, and then I'm going to append to this div spans that contain the index. So index L inner HTML append, and then span, but this time not with a character. As you can see, this will be the same. I can see this 1, 2, 3, 4 because I had these spans here. So I'm going to remove this. Just keep these two empty. And instead of displaying the chars here, I'm going to display index +1. Okay, I have all these characters. This looks really nice. Let me just style this differently from the string. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to find the, that's the index, that's the spans inside the index. So color gray to give it a slightly different color. And I also want to highlight the last element in this section because this is actually the length. This is what the string length property gives us, the last count, let's say, the number of elements contained within this this list of characters. So in order to target this last element in this list of spans with CSS, I'm going to use the span last child, and this will give me a way to target the last child within a list of child elements. So as you can see, last child, and I have this hot pink here, which is a really nice color. Let me output the length also in an element below. So I will go here and I will say, so console output. So that's what I would see in JavaScript if in the console if I were to run this code, the sum string length, which is 12. So span, let's give it an ID length. I will start with 12. I will hardcode 12 because the hello world hardcoded here has 12 characters, but we will change this dynamically. So let's also give that length a nice hot pink color. So let's style this with the same color. And now I'm going to get the length dynamically through JavaScript and put it here. So let me grab that element. So I have the length element, and then I'm going to say length element, and then text content equals string array length. Let's see if that works. Let's remove it here so I can see that this is an actual dynamic value. Okay, perfect. So we have some JavaScript code to split the string into different characters, into the characters that it's made up of, get the total length, and then display it here. So now I have this nice example where I can see how a string is split into characters and how each character is counted, and we get the length. So we have a nice visual representation of the length property. The last thing I want to do, of course, is to change this string, and as I change this string, this whole area will be updated dynamically. So if I put ABC, I should be seeing ABC here, 1, 2, 3 here, and 3 here. So let me do this. Now, in order to do this, I need to check on an event that happens whenever I change something on an HTML element that has the content editable attribute. The event that happens when I change something on an element with content editable is the input event. So I already have the string, the string here, the string element, and I'm going to add an event listener to listen on the input event. So on the string element, which is this element that contains this string, I'm going to listen on the input event, and whenever something changes, I will see the type of the event, get the target element, which is the actual element that I'm supplying the add event listener to, and then the text content, which will be the value. Let's see all this in. Okay, so this should work. Like if I change something here, I should be seeing the type of the event, which is input, the element that is currently triggering this input event, and the content, the text content of this element. Let's see if that works. So yes, indeed, I see the input event, the element that triggered the event, and the text. Perfect. So I have everything I need. The thing I need to do now is supply this value, this hello world value, to my code so that it automatically refreshes, re-renders this content. So in order to do that, let me just comment this out, is I'm going to grab this code, paste it here. Let me put this, and I'm going to replace this with the text content that I get from the input. So const, let's make this, let's say value equals e-target text content. And then I'm going to split this. And then I'm going to iterate and use this value. So on the input event, I grab the text, I split the text into characters, I iterate over these characters and update these two divs. And then, of course, I also update this element. Let's see if this works. Oops, there's a problem here. Why this happens is we see that every time we add something, we change something here, this text is being appended to this element. So instead of just putting the string ABC here, this is being appended at the end. So it keeps the previous value and it appends this value. This is because when I'm triggering this input event, I'm appending to these elements. I'm not clearing them first. So that's why I end up with these large strings. So the thing I want to do here is to clear these elements, the inner HTML content, before actually iterating over the value and updating. That's a simple thing to do. I can say inner HTML equals to an empty string, and then index. So every time now I update, you will see that it will be clearing the inner HTML of these two elements and then starting from scratch. So now I have everything I need. Like this, I can see the total length, and I can see the spaces. Everything works fine. The only thing is that I'm duplicating some code here. So I have this code that splits the string and then iterates and then updates this content. And I have this in these two places. So I'm repeating myself. So in order like to make our code a little bit better, I'm going to create a function that will render this widget, which means it will update these two boxes and this console output, given a text string. So given a text, it will split this text, it will iterate over and then update. So I'm going to put this here. I'm creating a function, and then of course I'm going to replace the string with the text. And now I need, of course, to call this this method. So let's call render with str. Let's see if this works. So it works. I'm calling the function. I'm applying the str hello world. The text gets split. We iterate, and then we update the widget. Now, in order for this to be working correctly, I need to be clearing the inner HTML of these two elements before iterating, so that I don't have the appending effect. Let's see. It should be working. And now in order to run this render whenever I update, as you can see, I'm having some problems here. We'll fix them. So I will remove this code, and instead of just repeating myself, I will call render with value. Now this should call the render method, and then ABC space DEF. So I have everything I need. Okay, let me see if I missed anything. So everything works like this, console log. So this is the interactive playground, and this is how we can use this to actually visualize the length property of the string data type. I hope you enjoyed this video. Before wrapping up, let's summarize and see what we actually used and learned. So we used some Emmet abbreviations to help us quickly write the code. Check the description on the video to see and learn more about Emmet. We use the code element to put our code. We split every code section, every code term inside the span. We apply the class, and then we style this element according to some syntax highlighting theme that we found in VS Code online editor. Then we put the content editable attribute to this element, so we can actually trigger an edit, dynamic edit in the web page. We grab this element, we split this into different characters, we iterated over these characters through the render method, and then we updated these two elements to actually display these the characters and the index and the count. We also learned a lot about selectors, the nth child, the last child, this selector, let me MDN CSS selector, I always forget the name. You will find the CSS selectors link. This is the child combinator selector to target specific elements, and then we use the outline to debug our layout. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any comments. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. See you in the next video.